I think it's fair to say we have a bit of a healthy obsession with Renault in this country. Sorry, it could be Renault, depending on where you're from. This is the Captur or Captur, again, depending on where you're from. And this is the E-Tech version of it, which is a plug-in hybrid because it's so in vogue right now. This one will do about 50 kilometers on a full charge. You can charge it at home on a wall box or on a public charger, like the one here, in about 3 hours. I probably wouldn't be sitting there because you're going to get an overstay charge if you're at a public charger. So I'd probably just leave it away at home. It's not going to do fast charging, but certainly overnight or parked at home while you're doing the dinner, you'll be fully charged and ready to go with a fresh 50 kilometers. That does come at a cost though, because after grants, this car is just under 30,000 euro, and there is an identical petrol only version that's on sale. In fact, we reviewed it on the channel already. You can watch it right here if you like. And this version, because it has batteries, is a little bit compromised. This is where you'll find the charging port on the car. It's just like a fuel flap, identical one around the other side of the car. Then we're going to get LED lights around the back and also on the front. These are really bright at night time and they look very, very, I suppose, expensive and futuristic. And then around the back, you're going to get an E-Tech plug-in hybrid badge. This is the first compromise of the vehicle though, because that boot is sitting a little bit higher and it's just not, when that parcel shelf is flat like that, remember, it's not the biggest space. Now you do get places under here to store your granny cable and your Type 2 cable, which is the one that connects into the wall box or the public charger. Go ahead, punk. So you can use them. They do, however, nicely tuck under that shelf if you've got time to carefully rest it down. But yeah, smaller boot than the petrol one. Another thing the car will do is it will lock when it thinks you're walking away, and it will beep like that. And at 3 in the morning, that might wake up the neighbours, but I do like the fact that you can keep the key in your pocket, never need to worry about it using this car. The front has been, I suppose, a little bit freshened up, and these LED lights are massively bright and like really chunky and just a part of the car. You can't really miss them. And it has got a slightly higher up ride height. If you want a vehicle that's a bit easier to climb into, this could be an option for you. See the way it's just opening, just like that. It's clever. Another way this car will tell you that it's doing good things for the planet is that it has little blue rings around the Renault logos on the caps of the alloys. So if you don't spot the badge at the back and the extra socket, then you'll go, ooh, I think that's green, madam. And beyond here, very like the typical Captur setup for your phone, you can wirelessly charge it down here. And it's a bit of a strange place to put it because you can't see it, but some people would argue, well, that's the best place for it when you're behind the wheel of something that weighs over a ton and that can drive towards people. The armrest is slightly adjustable and there's 2 places for cup holders. There's even somewhere for your key down here. But as I said earlier on in the video, you don't need to take the key out of your pocket at any stage driving pretty much any Renault these days. The floating tablet is huge. This is the updated version of it. You'll see it in the Zoe and certainly other versions of the Captur or Captur. You can do sources like digital radio, Bluetooth, CarPlay if you've got a cable, and then down here you have the familiar climate controls. The thing that I can't understand is if you put it in auto, the aircon button isn't on. If you put it in auto in any other car, the climate's on. So then what's the AC button for? Answers on a postcard in the comments below, please. Thankfully the cruise control, again, is back up here and your displays are colourful and easy to use, just like this screen actually. It's big and it's chunky, so you're not going to struggle to go, where's that setting again? You know, you can browse to radio stations and you can set up the pure EV mode and it'll tell you what's going on here in your display. It'll tell you if you've got how much of your 50 kilometers range you've got left, and of course then you can use that in combination with a hybrid engine as well, so you don't have to be in just EV mode if you don't want to, and you can quickly press the button here that'll turn EV on or off. If you've got enough range in your battery, you can switch between full EV mode or hybrid at the touch of a button. Again, there's no digging through menus to get there. And I like the seats. They're reasonably supportive and they're comfortable, and I have no complaints about them whatsoever. Now back here. Okay, so first of all you have a little bar here that you can make yourself have a slightly bigger boot because you need it, and you can also adjust this bench. Now if you adjust the bench, you're going to have less leg room obviously in here, and then it gets really, really tight. But it's adequate if your front passenger and driver aren't the longest humans in the world. You won't struggle with legroom because the seats are really high off the floor. It's just the actual legroom part. If you're behind the passenger who's quite tall, you're going to have the seats right up against your knees, so it is tight. The other thing is these little pillars here. As soon as you get out of the car the first time, warn passengers, I don't want to keep doing this, but for the purposes of the tape I'm going to have to, you will hit your head off these. These encroach far too much. I whacked my head off this first time. So yeah, I'd nearly put a warning on the back of the seats. Injuries are not the responsibility of the owner of the vehicle, because, ow, they just come in way too much. You'll get 2 child seats in here. If you need the backs of the seats back, those infant seats with the big shells over them might be a bit of a struggle. Obviously, temperature outside, time of year, whether you're using climate control and aircon or you've got a window down instead, they'll all affect your range, just like any sort of battery powered vehicle. When you start this car up from full charge, it'll say 50 kilometers, but don't be surprised if 3 minutes later it says 42, because that can happen. But then, after that initial cold vehicle part of the journey is sorted, it actually becomes quite stable. And even at motorway speeds, I've driven it at 120, 100 kilometers an hour, and the range doesn't just drop drastically. So that side of it is very, very good. An edge that the petrol version of the Captur has over it, though, is it just handles better. Like, the steering on this is so light that at any slight movement on the steering wheel, it's jerking from left to right, and it can make for just an unpleasant kind of navigation around bends, and particularly if you're doing any sort of spirited driving. There's no doubt you're not going to see the full 40 to 50 kilometer range if you are driving at motorway speeds, but it's stable nonetheless. City centre environments like what I'm in now is really the perfect scenario for a plug-in hybrid. If you're somewhere that you can drive to work, perhaps in charge, or use public chargers, then you really do have an option, I suppose, to cruise around in almost zero emission driving, which is what everyone's, I suppose, hoping to get to at one point or another. But I just think, you know, manufacturers are making these types of cars to get their overall emission figures down, not necessarily because the plug-in version is any better than the petrol one and is always going to be dearer. On that city driving, if you put your boot down with range, sometimes it can hesitate, but it wasn't. I was going from quite a slow speed to trying to pick it up, but generally it's brisk, and that instant acceleration that you want with an EV is there, and it means that you're going to be able to pull away from the lights compared to an awful lot of more expensive cars, probably quicker. Indicator, as you can hear, is incredibly noisy. Renault drivers are not drivers who don't know whether they have their indicator on or off, and clearly, I mean, you know, you don't want to be something wrong with you not to be able to hear that. So that is incredibly loud and annoying. The thing about the Captur E-Tech is it will do around 1.2 litres per 100 kilometers if you do keep it topped up, and that is at very minimum the standard for plug-in hybrids, but it's definitely on the better side. And as I've been saying, if you drive it having pretty much constantly plugged it in, you're going to do zero emissions driving. That's not to say that you don't feel the weight of the battery of the car, and you really do, like little adjustments and the car is whoop, whoop. It's like, it's just too much, and the petrol version doesn't do that. So that weight, I don't know if it's just because it's a slightly higher up car, or the batteries overall sit too high up in the car, but yeah, you could end up feeling seasick if you were a bit too enthusiastic with the steering, that's for sure. You can discount a lot of that seasick feeling though if you don't drive like that, and there's a good chance a lot of you watching don't. If it's just for going to the shops once a week and you really do want to get into a green space and tell people that you can plug your car into charge it, then they're the pros of the car. But if you actually do a bit more driving, I'd probably just stick to a petrol or diesel equivalent, because there's so many options. If you have a look at Renault.ie, It's actually a great website, and you can compare different model specs and start off the comparisons of the different costs, and you can very quickly and easily just mix and match and compare and see what spec is in it. I think overall though, the petrol is just the more enjoyable car to drive, and when you've driven that before, you've driven the plug-in hybrid version, it's just kind of hard to forget. Equally though, when you're on the move or pulling away from something like a toll bridge, the car just goes. So that's really a good side of it. There's that instant level of takeoff torque that will almost shove you into the back of your seat, and that's where you'll catch other cars by surprise, and they'll be going, oh, what's that? That's sort of a Renault. It's got a GT5 engine in it. Wouldn't that be an idea? Oh yeah. When you're in EV mode, it's incredibly smooth. If you get the right surface as well, it's just gliding along. It's a lovely kind of calm feeling. The petrol engine will probably make a bit more noise there, all right. I'll give it that. I'll give it that. I also just think when Renault have something like the Zoe that is not going to, in some cases, cost more at all. In fact, it might be a bit less, and that'll do the faster charging and stuff. Is a Zoe going to be that much smaller than this car? I don't think so. And you'll actually have a full-on EV. I'm sorry, Captur, I really do love you in petrol. It's not you, it's me. But yeah, the plug-in hybrid, unless you really want to go green, or unless you really need to do zero emissions driving, I think I'd just stick to the petrol. They've definitely tried to compensate for the lack of rear space in the car by putting things like Isofix seats in the front passenger seat, and the adjustable bench. That is pretty good, and it's quite unique. It's not the only car in the market of this kind of segment that'll do it, but they're few and far between. But overall, I think the best thing you can do with the Captur is just get the standard petrol one, because it drives better, it's going to be cheaper, and it has a bigger boot. There's ways to support the channel, links down below. There's Patreon and PayPal, and if you want to subscribe, even that is free and most welcome. I'll see you on the next one.